Dorilla the Gorilla thought the nightmare was finally over. Then, one message appeared on his old phone. "We found your missing money." 3 days later, every dollar he had left was gone. But who could steal from someone who had already been robbed? Over 42 years of honest work, Dorilla wasn't dreaming about luxury. He only wanted enough to buy birthday gifts for his grandchildren and never become a burden to his family. Instead, retirement became the loneliest chapter of his life. Most people know about cryptocurrency scams. Almost nobody knows what happens next. Hidden in the shadows is an even more dangerous predator, one that hunts people who have already been hurt. This is the story of a trap few survivors ever see coming. Morning sunlight filters through towering jungle trees. Birds sing softly. Dorilla the Gorilla wakes before sunrise, just as he did for decades. His small wooden cabin is simple. The walls are covered with faded photographs. One shows him carrying heavy logs as a young worker. Another captures his retirement celebration, where everyone smiled and promised to stay in touch. Most of those promises quietly disappeared. Every morning, Dorilla follows the same routine. He boils coffee over a small fire, waters the vegetables behind his cabin, and sits on his porch watching the jungle awaken. He smiles when he hears young animals laughing nearby. Their laughter reminds him why he worked so hard. Not for expensive things, not for fame, for family, for peace, for the hope that growing old would finally mean resting. But retirement had become strangely quiet. Some days, the only voice he heard belonged to the old radio resting on the shelf. Many retirees prepare financially for retirement, but few prepare emotionally. The silence after a lifetime of work can become its own kind of storm. Dorilla checks his mailbox. Nothing. He glances at his phone. No new messages. He sighs. Then, the screen lights up. Unknown number. His eyes widen for only a moment. He ignores it. He has learned to ignore strangers, or so he believes. The next afternoon, another message arrives. It doesn't ask for money. It doesn't make promises. Instead, it says something impossible. "We believe you were the victim of cryptocurrency fraud. Our investigation has located your missing funds." Dorilla freezes. His heart begins racing. Months earlier, he had lost nearly everything in an online investment scheme he barely understood. He had never told many people. Only one. Saru the monkey. Saru had encouraged him to try something modern. When everything disappeared, Saru simply shrugged. Nobody could have known. Dorilla wanted to believe him. The new message continues. "You qualify for professional recovery assistance. No payment required until verification. No pressure, no urgency, no flashing warnings. Only calm, polite words." Exactly the kind of message a frightened retiree wants to read. The most dangerous predators rarely chase their victims. They wait until hope returns. Dorilla hesitates. His finger hovers above the screen. Delete or reply. Across the jungle, hidden behind thick vines, golden eyes quietly watch. Kitsune the fox smiles. Not because Dorilla answered, because Dorilla paused. The trap has already begun. The following morning, Dorilla receives a video call. The fox on the screen wears a neat suit and speaks with calm confidence. Bookshelves fill the background. Certificates hang perfectly on the wall. Everything looks professional. Everything feels safe.
"Mr. Dorilla,"
Kitsune says warmly.
"I'm sorry for what happened to you."
Nobody had apologized before. Not the investment website, not the authorities, not even Saru. For the first time since losing his savings, Dorilla feels understood. Kitsune explains that his organization specializes in helping scam victims recover stolen cryptocurrency. He never guarantees success. He speaks slowly, patiently, like someone who truly cares. Then he says something that shakes Dorilla to his core.
We've already traced part of your missing retirement funds.
Dorilla's eyes fill with tears. Could it really be true? Kitsune shares documents, charts, transaction records, official-looking seals. Everything appears convincing. The narrator quietly warns, recovery scammers don't sell investments. They sell something far more powerful. A pause. They sell hope. Just then, Saru arrives carrying a basket of fruit. Dorilla excitedly tells him everything. Instead of asking questions, Saru grins.
I told you good things happen to patient people.
Dorilla smiles. For the first time in months, he begins imagining a future where his retirement is whole again. But as the camera rises above the jungle canopy, a lone turtle slowly watches from the riverbank. Kame says nothing yet. His eyes remain fixed on the distant fox, because wisdom often recognizes danger long before everyone else does. The jungle feels different now. The bright morning songs of birds are replaced by distant thunder. A cool wind rustles through the trees as Dorilla sits at his kitchen table, staring at his phone. Another message from Kitsune.
Good news, Mr. Dorilla. We have successfully frozen part of the stolen cryptocurrency. There's only one final verification before we can release it to you.
Dorilla reads the message twice. His heart pounds. Could this really be the miracle he had prayed for? The video call begins. Kitsune appears calm, smiling as always.
Mr. Dorilla,
He says gently.
our investigators worked all night. We believe we've recovered nearly 80% of your missing retirement savings.
Dorilla grips the edge of the table. 80%. Enough to pay his bills. Enough to replace the money he thought was gone forever. Enough to sleep peacefully again. Kitsune continues.
There's just one small obstacle.
Dorilla's smile fades.
The government requires a verification deposit before recovered assets can legally be released.
Dorilla blinks. A verification deposit? Kitsune replies.
Yes, it isn't a fee. You'll receive every dollar back immediately after verification.
The words sound reasonable. Not payment. Verification. The difference seems small, but words can be traps. That afternoon, Saru visits again. Dorilla explains everything. Instead of questioning the request, Saru laughs.
That's normal.
Dorilla hesitates.
I've never heard of that.
Saru shrugs.
You've never recovered crypto before either.
Dorilla forces a smile. It almost makes sense. Almost. As evening falls, Dorilla walks through the jungle carrying a lantern. He notices something unusual. Near the riverbank sits Kame the Turtle, silent, watching the flowing water. Dorilla greets him politely. Kame smiles without turning.
Sometimes,
Kame says quietly.
the river gives back what was lost.
Dorilla nods hopefully.
But
Kame finally looks at him.
the river never asks for payment before returning what already belongs to you.
Dorilla freezes. Before he can respond, Kame slowly disappears into the mist. Was it advice or simply an old turtle speaking in riddles? Dorilla isn't sure, but Kitsune's message is still glowing in his pocket, and hope is louder than doubt. The next morning arrives heavy in fog. Dorilla hasn't slept. He keeps replaying two voices inside his head. One belongs to Kitsune.
This is your final step.
The other belongs to Kame.
The river never asks for payment.
Which voice tells the truth? At exactly 9 a.m., Kitsune calls. His expression looks concerned.
I'm afraid time is becoming critical.
Dorilla feels his stomach tighten.
The criminals who stole your money may move the remaining assets if verification isn't completed today.
Urgency, not panic, just enough pressure to silence careful thinking. Dorilla whispers.
How much?
Kitsune pauses.
As little as $10,000 will satisfy the verification requirement.
Dorilla closes his eyes. 10,000. It is almost everything he has left. His emergency savings, the money reserved for medicine, for home repairs, for unexpected hospital visits. Money earned through 42 years of lifting heavy timber beneath the jungle sun. He walks slowly toward the old wooden chest beside his bed. Inside are faded envelopes, each labeled carefully. Medical, emergency, grandchildren. His hands tremble as he opens them. Scammers rarely steal money first. They steal the story people tell themselves. Once someone believes rescue is only one step away, fear begins to sound like hope. Dorilla transfers the money. His finger hesitates above the final button. Then, click. A small notification appears. Transfer complete. Silence. The jungle itself seems to stop breathing. For a brief moment, Dorilla smiles. Maybe this nightmare is finally ending. Across the jungle, hidden deep inside a luxurious treehouse filled with glowing computer screens, Kitsune leans back in his chair. He smiles, not with relief, with satisfaction. The predator has just finished feeding. 2 hours pass. Nothing. Dorilla refreshes his email. Nothing. He checks his messages. Nothing. No call, no confirmation, no recovery. Only silence. By evening, Dorilla finally reaches Kitsune. The fox answers immediately.
I'm sorry, Mr. Dorilla.
Dorilla exhales with relief. Then Kitsune continues.
Another complication has appeared.
Dorilla's face goes pale.
There is now an international tax clearance.
A what?
Standard procedure.
How much?
Kitsune hesitates just long enough to sound believable.
$15,000.
Dorilla's world stops.
I don't have that.
Kitsune's friendly smile disappears.
If payment isn't received within 24 hours, your recovered assets may be permanently lost.
The call ends. Dorilla stares at the black screen. His reflection looks older than yesterday. Older than retirement, older than hope itself. Slowly, he understands. Not all at once. Piece by piece. Like a tree falling one branch at a time. The recovery was never real. That night, rain pours over the jungle. Dorilla walks alone beneath the storm until he reaches the river. He drops to his knees. His shoulders shake. Not because of the money, because of the shame. He whispers into the darkness.
How could I fall for this twice?
The rain hides his tears. From the shadows, another figure quietly approaches. Not rushing, not judging. Simply walking beside him. Kame the Turtle. The old mentor says nothing for several moments. Then he places one weathered hand gently on Dorilla's shoulder.
The greatest predators
Kame says softly.
do not hunt the foolish.
Dorilla looks up.
They hunt the wounded.
For the first time since the nightmare began, Dorilla doesn't feel alone. The camera slowly pulls back, revealing the vast jungle under the stormy sky. Somewhere in the darkness, Kitsune is already searching for his next victim. But this story is no longer only about loss. It is about learning how to stop the predator before someone else enters the trap. The rain has stopped. Morning light breaks through the jungle canopy, but Dorilla does not notice. He sits quietly beside the river, staring at the water flowing around smooth stones. Hours pass. Kame the Turtle remains beside him. Neither speaks. Sometimes, silence is kinder than advice. Finally, Dorilla breaks it.
I lost my retirement.
He swallows hard.
Then I lost what little I had left trying to get it back.
His voice cracks.
I failed twice.
Kame slowly shakes his head.
No.
Dorilla looks up.
You were wounded twice.
Kame picks up a fallen leaf and places it gently on the water. The current carries it downstream.
When a healthy tree is struck by lightning,
Kame says,
the insects do not attack first. They wait. They know the tree is already weak. The leaf disappears around a bend. The same is true of financial predators. They don't search for the smartest. They don't search for the richest. They search for the hurting.
Dorilla closes his eyes. For the first time, he realizes something that had never crossed his mind. The second scam wasn't random. Someone already knew he had been a victim. Someone had found his name, his loss, his fear, his hope. Across North America, thousands of scam victims are targeted again by criminals pretending to recover stolen money. Recovery scams prey on the emotional wounds left behind by the first crime. Kame turns toward Dorilla.
The money may be gone,
Dorilla lowers his head.
but your voice is not. What you have learned could protect another family.
Those words land differently. Dorilla cannot change yesterday, but perhaps he can change someone else's tomorrow. Several weeks later, Dorilla begins doing something he never imagined. Instead of hiding his story, he tells it. At the Jungle Community Hall, dozens of older animals gather on wooden benches. Some came out of curiosity. Others came because they too had received mysterious messages promising recovered money. Dorilla takes a deep breath. His hands still tremble, not from fear, from honesty.
I was embarrassed. I almost stayed silent. I thought losing money meant losing my dignity.
The room grows still. Heads begin to nod. Many recognize those feelings. Dorilla describes every step, the polite messages, the professional video calls, the official-looking documents, the pressure, the false hope. Then he says the sentence he wishes someone had told him months earlier.
No honest person can recover your money by asking you to send more money first.
The room remains silent, not because they disagree, because the truth is painfully simple. Kame steps forward. He draws a circle in the dirt with his walking stick.
This circle,
He says.
is trust.
He draws another circle outside it.
This is urgency. When someone pushes urgency outside your circle of trust,
He stops.
walk away.
The lesson is easy to remember, even easier to share. The narrator quietly adds, scammers depend on secrecy. Education spreads faster than fear. Across the room, one elderly rabbit quietly deletes a suspicious message from her phone. Without realizing it, Dorilla has already protected someone. The seasons begin to change. Dorilla's savings are not magically restored. His losses remain real. But something inside him begins to heal. With Kame's guidance, he starts rebuilding one careful step at a time. He creates a simple notebook. Inside, he writes 3 questions on the very first page. Whenever anyone offers money, investments, or financial help, he asks, who are they? Can I verify this independently? Why are they asking me to act today? If he cannot answer all 3, he waits. He also makes another promise. No financial decision alone. Every important choice is discussed with trusted family members or friends before anything is signed or transferred. Not because he is weak, because wisdom welcomes another pair of eyes. Soon Dorilla begins visiting neighboring villages, not to sell anything, not to frighten anyone, only to tell his story. At first, only a handful of retirees attend. Then dozens, then hundreds. Letters begin arriving from across the jungle. Because of your story, I hung up the phone. I refused to send money. I warned my sister. You saved our retirement. Dorilla realizes something unexpected. Although he could not recover his own savings, he helped protect countless others. That legacy becomes worth more than any investment statement. One quiet evening, Dorilla returns to the same porch where this story began. The rocking chair still creaks softly. The coffee still steams in the morning air. The jungle still wakes with birdsong. Yet everything feels different. Not because his money returned, because his fear no longer controls him. His grandchildren arrive carrying small backpacks. They run into his arms. One of them asks,
Grandpa, are you sad anymore?
Dorilla smiles.
I still miss what I lost,
He looks toward the forest.
but I would miss even more if I let shame keep me silent.
Across the jungle, authorities finally close in on Kitsune's operation. Computer screens go dark. False websites disappear. Phones stop ringing. Some victims recover nothing. Some recover a little. Justice is imperfect, but truth has begun catching up with deception. Kame watches the sunset beside the river. Without looking away, he says one final lesson.
The strongest tree is not the one that never faced a storm.
He pauses.
It is the one that teaches the forest where lightning falls.
Financial predators count on silence. They count on embarrassment. They count on victims believing they are alone. They are wrong. The camera rises high above the jungle. Dorilla's small cabin becomes just one among thousands of homes stretching across the forest. Each one belongs to someone who worked hard, someone who trusted, someone who hopes to retire in peace. One final message appears. If someone promises to recover your lost money but asks you to send money first, stop. Verify independently. Talk to someone you trust. A moment of caution today may protect a lifetime of hard work.